Good morning, guys, and welcome to the podcast from Las Vegas, Nevada. I've got Ray Lozano, and he is a public speaker that aims to build healthy habits for young and the upcoming students. And he combines education, information, humor, and he inspires the younger generation to pursue their dreams and to build healthy habits. So, I'm really happy to have him and talk about all of his work, especially those that are interested in thought leadership, public speaking. And so, Ray, welcome.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on your show. So I'm so happy to be here today.
Yeah. Briefly introduce yourself and we'll dive into the questions.
All right. Like you said, my name's Ray Lozano. When I was a kid, I grew up in a house that had a lot of drug and alcohol problems.
Mm.
And the big question I had at age 9 is why? Why do people do drugs? I
Yeah.
saw my dad using and never saw any good stuff come from that. So my whole life has been in pursuit of understanding how drugs affect us and then being able to present that to kids. So
Yeah.
that's one of the things that we do. And then I found out that there's a lot of people that have stories that want to talk to kids. So the other thing that we've developed is teaching them how to talk to junior high and high school kids, because it's a whole different thing than speaking to adults.
Yeah. And diving into the question is for those that are listening and the audience wants to become thought leaders and so how did you what is the best way to get into this area where you're speaking in front of people, sharing ideas? How did you do it?
You know what? It's a difficult market to break in, but once you break into it, there's a lot of room inside.
Hmm.
And so one of the things that you have to do is you have to have some type of presentation that's going to appeal to junior high kids and high school kids. The
Uh-huh.
problem that most people have is they develop something and then they present it to the schools, and the school's like, yeah, we don't need that. And
Yeah.
so the best way to go about it is to survey your schools in your area to find out what kind of information are you looking for? What kind of problems are the kids having? What would be a solution that you think would be for them? And then you develop a product that's designed for them. So I see so many speakers go the other route and they end up having trouble getting work.
Mm. Yeah. And what it sounds like is you're basically reverse engineering
Yes.
and basically finding your audience and target audience. The deeper question is with the younger generation, they have short attention spans. They may still be discovering themselves. So how do you connect with your audiences?
What kids love to laugh just like adults. And so normally when there's a drug and alcohol presentation, you'll get introduced by, we have a speaker here today who's going to talk to you about the dangers of drugs and alcohol.
Mm.
And that immediately puts a wall between you and your audience. And
Uh-huh.
so we've changed that introduction and we use a lot of humor and kids are laughing. We're giving them some really strong points about nicotine, but it's all wrapped in humor. And I'm sure anytime you've seen like a comedian talking and then they'll put in like this really strong point, something either political or something that's happening in society. But because it's all wrapped in humor, you take it differently than if they were trying to drill that information in your head.
Mhm. Yeah. And what I love is because you're talking about engaging through humor
Mhm.
and storytelling. So the next question is just talk about what impact have you seen in the schools and have you the because I know speaking in front of kids or younger audiences, they're like I said, they may not be as receptive. And tell us some success stories that from schools
Uh,
that have implemented what you've taught.
yeah, we have had quite a few success stories. And I love that TikTok is out there because kids reach us like 15 minutes after we leave, we already have kids contacting us. Two success stories that come to mind right away. We were talking about alcohol and how alcohol, when somebody drinks, they act different. I don't know if you've been around people that drink. They immediately get louder, and then pretty soon they start saying stuff that they would not normally say. So I'm explaining this in a real fun, humorous way. And I see this young girl in the front, a couple rows back, and you could tell she's holding back tears. So when the presentation was over, everybody left. And this young lady walked up to me and she goes, "Is that why my dad says bad stuff to me when he's drunk?" And I'm like, "Yes, that's why." I
Mhm.
said, "It's not you, it's your dad. And there's stuff coming out of your dad." And she goes, "Man, he always hurts me when he's drunk. I have to stay away from him just because of the stuff that he says."
Mhm.
And I says, when your dad's next time your dad's intoxicated and he starts saying those things, I know it's super hard not to take that personal,
Mhm.
but more than likely he's talking to himself through those things that he's saying. I said, "What does he say?" And he says, man, I'm a loser. I'm never going to amount to anything. And he just says all these hurtful things. And then she caught back up to us later on, probably a couple of weeks later on TikTok. And she said, man, that has really helped her to understand her dad. And instead of being mad at him, she looks at him now with a lot of pity. That's one success story that we had.
Mm.
Another success story is a kid that started using his electronic cigarette in 8th grade, smoked all of 8th grade, smoked all summer. And now that he's in high school, he wants to play baseball and football, and he's having trouble breathing. And he asked us, is that my vape? And I'm like, yeah, more than this. And I'm not a doctor, but if you're a freshman in high school, the last thing you should have is probably trouble breathing unless you've had asthma or something in the past. He goes, no, I haven't. So we gave him this little 3-day test that he could do, just something he could do on his own, no charge, no anything, just try to hold out for 3 days without using it. And he said he couldn't do it. So through TikTok, through our messaging and all that, we're helping him break that habit of vaping. But yeah, that's two of the success stories that come to mind immediately.
That's fascinating. Okay. That's a really interesting success story. And when you can reach kids at an early age, that can be very powerful, especially. So, talk about this role of social media and peer influence, because you talked about TikTok and a lot of how does the social media impact teens' perceptions around the substance, drugs, tobacco, alcohol, sex, and how do you
Right.
use social media for good?
Right. Yeah. It is, anything you're looking for, you can find it on the internet. It's just so crazy to me. Like, I went through this period where I was trying to lose weight, and they're like, drink more water. You're drinking too much water. Eat meat. Don't eat meat. Eat more vegetables. Don't, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so confusing. And I thought, whatever I want to do, I can find something to reinforce that.
Yeah.
Same thing with kids. If they want to smoke weed, they can find that information. If they don't want to smoke weed, they can find that information. And that's the tough part about social media.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we do is we just give them information. Yeah. And we let kids know we're not here to take away any freedom. We're not even here to try to scare you in any way. We're just going to give you some information, and hopefully through that information, you'll do better. And so that's the one thing that we do. And there's that saying, I'm sure you've heard it, knowledge is power. And everybody believes that, but knowledge is potential power. And it depends on what you do with that knowledge. So I could know that driving 80 miles an hour down the street is bad. That's knowledge, right? But if I don't implement that, then what good is that knowledge? So we help kids, we give them great information, and then we show them how to implement that information as well.
Yeah. The next question I have for you is the role of community, and how do you use celebrities and influencers on youth behavior and also social in your peer groups?
So we don't use a lot of celebrities in anything that we do. And some of the times you'll find celebrities that are promoting marijuana. They're promoting other things. Right now I know psychedelics seem to be like on the rise a little bit. And I know there's some celebrities talking about that.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we talk about when kids bring that subject up, it's almost like driving. Like, you wouldn't want a 12 or 13-year-old driving, right? There's an age for them to start driving, which is 16. There's an age for them to start drinking alcohol, which is 21. And I said, if you see your celebrity on there and they're under the age, if they're 15 years old promoting marijuana, something like that, I said, that's, super dangerous information. But I said, look at all the people that are promoting it. They're probably in their 30s and 40s, right? They're not promoting it to you. They're promoting it to people their age. So we talk about that with students. Again, it's just that example of the driving is the one that hits home pretty well.
And so what I love is that you have a niche and you have a message and a story and you make a impact, but to make it last, what role, like if parents are listening to this that want to foster good habits in how do parents and community members play a role in supporting prevention efforts?
That is a great question. There's two things we're doing right now. For a long time, probably the past 12 years, I've been developing and have perfected this presentation called Getting Your Kids Addicted to You as a Parent. And so what happens is parents get locked in this system, right? They treat their kid like when they're 5, 6, and 7, they either yell at their kid or they do something to change the behavior of that child.
Yeah.
So if the kid keeps running out in the street, they'll yell at them or they'll jerk them back. They'll do something. But the problem is parents get stuck in that mode. So when their kids are 15, 16, 17, they're still treating them like they're 7 or 8-year-olds. And so one of the things that we talk about is the language that kids speak. They speak a whole different language than we do as adults. And what is crazy is I had a guy ask me if I would present this to his sales department on
Mhm.
just how to talk to your clients, talk to your customers. And it went over so well. So it looks like I'm moving into the corporate world on just how to talk to your clients. And
Yeah.
so it is an amazing thing. So when we teach parents, when we taught schools this, when we teach nonprofits, how to talk kid, every one of them has come back just with great results. We had a mom whose daughter got released from rehab.
Mhm.
And when she went through this training that we had, oh my gosh, she came back and said it revolutionized the way that she thought and the way that she talked to her daughter. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
Mhm.
Um, I know we have around 5 to 7 minutes remaining. And for those interested in public speaking and communication strategies, what are your top tips for crafting compelling presentations that leave a lasting impact?
Ah, you know what? When it comes to kids, it's different than adults. And we have a whole 6-week course on this. But one of the things that happens is you have to look at them differently because I've seen adults try to present adult information, right? Now, an introduction that you could do with adults would be something like 37% of, cancer patients are able to overcome their cancer because, and if you start off a presentation like that with a kid, you just lose it. You've immediately lost them, right? For an adult, that might be a compelling statistic. So what I let people know in our program is that when you're speaking with kids, it's a sprint. You just got to get off that board, man. You got to hit it as hard as you possibly can.
Mm,
With adults, it's more of a marathon.
mhm.
Now, the difference between training kids, speaking to kids and speaking to adults want 5 steps. If you do these 5 steps, you'll reach financial success. If you do these 3 steps, you'll get to the place where I'm at. If you do these things, then you'll be in this step. Kids hate that, man. They don't want to be told that. When you're presenting to youth, what youth want is, do I get them? Do I understand where they're coming from? Have I been in their position before? And so if I open up with something like, man, I bet you guys are glad to be out of class, boom, right? I got it. Or if I do something with, man, I was just speaking to a bunch of kids the other day that told me that bubble gum is out. Is that true? Is that something that, how many of you believe bubble gum? And so those are the types of things. And there's a whole bunch of them, but those are the two. Take off. No, it's a sprint. Second thing is youth need to know that you understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. And speaking to a lot of diverse audiences, I'm sure Las Vegas has got its share of you speak to so many, you speak to underserved communities and you speak to very the wealthy communities. So what are lessons learned from engaging these diverse audiences?
Just to let you know, we're national. We're all across the United States. So last week we were in Texas and all that. Here's the thing. You never ask from a kid something they cannot give, right? And so that's the other thing that I see a lot of speakers do is they're asking something from these kids that aren't able to give it. There's some kids that can laugh, they'll raise their hand, they'll be involved, they'll turn to their neighbor, they'll because they have the ability to give that. But when we go into an alternative high school or we go into California Youth Authority, these kids cannot give you a laugh. They can't. And I understand that. And
Mm,
it's just the way that they are. So I don't do stuff that forces them to give me something back as a presenter that they do not have the ability to give. And so that's one of the big things that we always immediately identify our audience. Before we go out and do a presentation, I either look up the school or find out where they're at. As the kids are walking in, I immediately tailor my introduction to that group. If they're walking in, happy introduction. If they're walking in really quiet, it's going to be a more quiet, subdued introduction.
mm, interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so to round it out, it's very interesting, especially your particular niche. And I know you've got online programs, you've got speaking, you've got blog. And so if people wanted to contact you and inquire more, how could they do that?
Super easy. Yeah, just go to raylozano.com and they can find me there. Or if they can't remember my name, all they have to do is go to Google and type in youth speaker on drugs, and I'll be the first guy that'll pop up. Man, I'm really sought after by schools, and our speaking program is just we're running full capacity all the time. And there's so many people out there. It makes me so happy because there's so many people out there that want to help youth. And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the positive impact that you're doing and keep up the great work.
Thanks. Thanks so much. Yeah.